All right, our 40 minutes are up, 45 minutes are up. These things should be a perfect medium rare. If you're going for something like medium, you probably want to turn the heat up from 200 to like 215 for 40 minutes. But you can see there's no sear on these steaks. This is literally medium rare all the way through. But they're a perfect temperature for medium rare. And all that time we had in between actually allowed us to prep some of our herbs for the potatoes that we're cooking alongside this. And we were able to get everything basically mise en place, which basically means everything's in its place. We're ready to pan sear those steaks and let them rest and serve. So one of the advantages of doing a reverse sear is that I get the chance to reposition everything in my kitchen just for this video. So I've put everything mise en place right here in front of me for when I pan sear these. So for steak, we're going to have, especially a ribeye steak, we're going to have thyme and rosemary, garlic, and butter. All right, everyone, remember I told you that reverse searing a steak gives you time for all your sides? I set a timer up here for 40 minutes when these came out of the oven. So I knew that my potatoes took at least 19 minutes to get tender and cooked. So now, as soon as this hits 21, I'm ready to take these potatoes off and strain them before I cook my steaks. And as those cool, I'll be cooking my steaks. It takes 2 to 3 minutes. And once those are resting, I can finish off my potatoes before I slice my steaks. All right, everyone. So I'm about to strain my potatoes. You can see here I got everything mise en place. And then our pan here needs to start smoking. So we're gonna see it just start to smoke here. And as you gain more experience, you'll get better at anticipating that. This is a cast iron pan. I've got it on 8.5, just bordering the highest heat possible. I need to strain my potatoes first. Heat off. And remember when we said we put that garlic in the middle after we scored it? Well, now we can give this steak a quick rub with that garlic. And this will show you how the reverse sear works a little bit. So if we zoom in and we look at this steak, we can see how this part right here is just slightly more cooked than the rest. It's actually from the heat of the oil from the garlic. That's a good sign for us. So we can see our pan's slightly smoking. Of all the oils, because we're reverse searing, we use olive oil. If you were just cooking a steak in the pan and in the pan exclusively, you would use grapeseed oil because it has a much higher smoke point. But we'll just put a dash of oil in there, probably about a tablespoon. And I'm going to do this one steak at a time. Usually I'd cook 2 steaks at a time. I'm going to pick this up. We're going to roll our oil. Steak in, lay away. That's the sound we're looking for. And we got 60 seconds on both sides. So I've already got my timer running up here. You see we're at 14 minutes and 40 seconds. In 30 seconds, I'm going to drop rosemary, I'm going to drop thyme, I'm going to drop butter, I'm going to drop garlic, all at the same time. And one advantage of reverse searing a steak is that most of the fat inside the steak is going to render while it's in the oven. So you don't have to worry about that. The steak, or the fat that we're worrying about on the ribeye, especially with the reverse sear, is the excess fat. So if we zoom in, we see this fat on the sides and inside. We really want to melt that down a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll turn the steak on its side right in between before we start basting and really giving the steak some of our love. We're going in with the butter, and that butter's going to brown up. We really have to move fast here. Turn around behind me. We'll take all 3 of our garlics, position our knife, crush the garlic, and that goes in as well. We're peeling our herbs go in, and that's going to pop. We've got our tongs because everything's mise en place. Need to mix everything into that butter. Just time to flip. We got a nice sear on that side of the steak. And mix everything in. Give that about 20 seconds on this side. Just keep mixing your herbs into that oil and that nice nutty flavored butter. Take all of our herbs on top of the steak with garlic if you can grab it. If you run out of time, don't worry about the garlic because it's really hard to grab with tongs. Slide on the one side. Take our rag, take our spoon, tilt, and then baste. This is where the steak picks up most of its flavor. Because all of those butter juices, all that fat is actually penetrating that sear that we created to really give it a nice nutty flavor. And you just baste all the way through that second minute. You see how our butter's a really nice deep brown? That's not burnt. That's on the verge of being burnt. That's why we have to move fast. Take our herbs out onto the pan. And we're going to lift our steak up and cook that nice fatty edge on the side. Trying to melt that down. Look at the sear on that other side. This steak's perfectly even, perfectly medium rare, which we'll see with the final outcome. So you can see we got some fat here that hasn't really started melting. That's when we decide what side we're going to lay down. So I'm going to lay the top side down because most of my fat is actually melted down on this side. We're going to prop our herbs. And then we have some fresh herbs over here on the side. And we take up, we dress. All that real nice hot fat and butter goes right over the top. And that's going to rest for 10 minutes. And that's another advantage of doing a reverse sear technique, because now we have time to do our second steak. All right, so I got about 1 minute and 55 seconds till the second steak that I cooked off is rested properly. One good reason that we reverse sear and only takes about 1 minute on each side is that it gives our steak, our first steak that we cook, plenty of time to rest and settle down. So I'll bring you over here just to take a look at that. So our first steak that we cooked is here on the right side. You can see how a lot of the juices here have run out. That's because everything's settling down inside that steak, and it's having an opportunity to reabsorb all of its natural juices. So in the meantime, for the next 18 seconds, I'm just going to show you guys a quick technique for chopping herbs so we can finish off the potatoes that we have here. So I've got rosemary and thyme here that I've already picked off the plant because reverse searing gave me enough time to go ahead and pick all these leaves off. Every time you use your knife, make sure you sharpen it. You really just want to let the knife do the work. Gather it back into a pile, cross it over itself, and then chop again. And remember, when you're chopping herbs, especially for potatoes, you don't want to overwork them, but you don't want to leave them too big either. And you want to leave it to be the last thing that you do, because there's a lot of oil inside these herbs that are going to be released as soon as you cut them. If you cut them too soon, all that oil runs out, all that goodness runs out, and you don't have anything for your potatoes. All right, everything's done. I don't know if you remember what the potatoes looked like last time, but I just bathed them in extra virgin olive oil and our herbs, and those look really great. Now to finish our steaks, what we do is we take our herb bunch that we put on top, and then we dressed it with the oil from the pan. We take that herb bunch and we're just going to brush the steak with it. And that's going to leave enough of that thyme and that rosemary behind to really give the steak a nice look. So we can zoom in on that and look at that. And then we also have the excess juices from the steak as it settled and rested right there in the pan beneath us. It makes a really easy cleanup. So the moment of truth is, determining whether or not we got this cooked right. If it's medium rare. So we go right to the center, right down the middle. Perfect medium rare.